One tenant claims that her landlord harassed her so badly that she was forced to leave her apartment. But there's a lot more to that story. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have quite the interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the Washington State, okay? And as you know, Washington State, bad place to be a landlord. They have very anti-landlord laws there, very pro-tenant laws, and a lot of the tenants, they know that they can live for months, if not longer, rent-free, and not face any consequences whatsoever. So this story, it has to do with a tenant who is claiming that her landlord harassed her. May be true, may not be true, but remember, we're only getting one side of the story when we read these articles where they only interview the tenant. So I like to fill in a few of the things that, my personal opinions of what the tenant is saying and let you know this probably is or is not what really happened, okay? So I'm going to go through the whole article. It's kind of a long one, so this video might be a little bit longer than what I normally do, but I thought this would be an interesting story. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So I've seen a lot of laws lately where they're talking about, oh, well, this law is made because landlords are always harassing tenants by, and I'm like, okay, well, you know what? A lot of tenants, the things they consider harassment, calling them and asking them to pay the rent, asking them to leave if they did not pay the rent, so that you don't have to file eviction, doing regular things, they consider harassment, okay? And just because you want to garner sympathy, you want to be able to stay longer, you want to go tell the judge, oh, they were harassing me, so you should let me stay here rent-free for even longer. That is what their plan is, okay? So they will lie, and it doesn't surprise anybody who is already a landlord that these sort of things are happening, right? So I always take the side of the landlord in these stories because there is no one else to tell their side of the story, okay? Anyway, I'm going to get into this article because, like I said, it is kind of long. This article is coming from the newstribune.com, and it says, she owed thousands of dollars in rent, but did her pile-up landlord take things too far? And forgive me if I got the name of this city, if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. I'm not from Washington State. I believe this city's in the Seattle area. But anyway, let me get into the article. In a quiet neighborhood on a cul-de-sac just west of pile-up city limits, the drill spinning into Betty Halbert's front door keyhole caused a sudden racket. Moments earlier, the drill's operator made a beeline to the door from the street. He wore a backward baseball cap, reflective yellow shirt, and tan work boots. Inside her duplex, Halbert rushed to investigate and, when face-to-face with the stranger outside, ordered him to leave and warned that she would be calling the police. About 10 seconds after, Halbert, 59, retreated indoors. The man swiftly flung the door open with his boot and took several steps into the living room. Halbert scurried to a pitchfork leaning against the wall, armed herself, and jabbed at the man. He lifted up a cow-patterned, cushioned dining chair to block thrusts of the garden tool before scampering out of the home. I don't know what he was doing there, Halbert told the News Tribune in July from the duplex she rented for some 6 years. I had been gardening out front, so I went after him. So what it sounds like is basically this guy, he drilled into the door, and she came at him with a pitchfork, and there was a bit of a confrontation. He ran up out of there, okay? So this is the incident that she claims, is going to be the landlord harassment, right? And let me continue with the story because there's a bit more to it. Halbert called for help. So did the apparent intruder, law enforcement records show. The man said he had a right to be there. He told the dispatcher he had signed a lease for the location. It was an odd and dangerous scene that unfolded June 7th, according to Halbert's account and surveillance video she shared with the News Tribune. It is only one among a number of incidents in recent months that she claimed were orchestrated by her landlord, Kafan Tony Shi. So the guy said that he had signed a lease for the apartment, right? So What this sounds like to me, and I don't know if, I covered a story a little while back about these people who help get rid of squatters, okay? And what they do is they go up into the unit, and then, the actual owner of the property, in order to get rid of the squatters, he will give the squatter removing people, right, a lease. And then the police can't remove those people either, okay? So what it sounds like is the owner of the property, the tenant is portraying herself, basically she's a squatter, okay? She's a squatter, somebody living in the property, won't pay rent, will not leave, and the owner of the property hired somebody to help get her out of there, okay? And this is one of the things that's being used, right? So she's trying to garner sympathy, but we come to find out that she's not a very sympathetic character. She's not the kind of person that should be getting any sympathy at all. And let me explain as we continue. Halbert moved into the duplex home in 2018, and she bought it in October of 2021, county property records show. He soon raised the $1,400 rent by $250, according to Halbert, who began having persistent issues paying it on time last year after she lost her ability to work. Halbert, who had a maintenance job, suffered a cervical spine injury while on the clock in December of 2022. Halbert said she tried to no avail for longer than a year to get a copy of her rental agreement from she and the property's manager in order to apply for rental assistance. Her ex-boyfriend took her previous copy, she said. In July of 2023, the property manager revealed that Halbert didn't have a lease with she and offered to draw one up and send it to Halbert to sign, text message shows. Halbert claimed she never received it. So what we find out is, okay, she lived in the property, right? This is an inherited tenant for the owner, right? So the owner buys the property, and as many owners do, when they buy a property, they have to increase the rent on the tenants who are living in there. And let me explain exactly why. Because the previous owner, they bought the property, who knows when, for a different price, usually much lower, and now the new owner has a higher loan payment. They may have higher property taxes, higher insurance costs, their expenses are higher. So regardless of if the new owner had to do any work on the property at all, their expenses are most likely much higher than the previous owner, and so they have to raise the rent in order to cover those costs. Okay, so don't think for one second this landlord who bought the property while she was living there was being greedy or whatever. They will go bankrupt trying to subsidize this lady's rent. So they had every right to go in there. She didn't have a lease agreement, right? So she had no right to this lower rent or whatever. And if she was unable to pay it, she should have said, hey, I can't pay this, and maybe we could work something out, or we can move on, okay? And that's what she should have done. Reliant on workers' comp, she regularly paid what she could but never caught up, sending anywhere between $250 and $1,200 in attempts to satisfy past due rent, according to dozens of text messages between her and her property manager that she shared with the News Tribune. By January, Halbert was 4 months behind. In early June, she owed $12,000 shortly after she filed an unlawful detainer complaint against her, court records show. Although she pursued an eviction through the appropriate legal channels, he has been accused of stepping outside the bounds of the law in an attempt to force Halbert out. So this lady owed 12 grand, okay? We're not talking about she's, a month behind in rent. She is, 6 months plus behind, okay? It said by January she was 4 months behind, and by June she owed 12 grand. Okay, so obviously she's at least 10 months behind on rent. How long is this landlord supposed to subsidize this lady? We don't know how long she has been causing this issue, but simply put, she needs to pay her rent or she needs to move on. It's that simple. And she didn't do either of those things. So now we're in a position where she's trying to garner sympathy. She's like, well, he should have worked with me so I could get rental assistance. That's not his problem. It's also not his problem if this lady became injured and for some reason her boyfriend moved out, she got injured, she can't pay her rent for whatever reason, is not the landlord's problem. Okay? We are not social service providers. We are not homeless shelters. So do not expect us to house people for subsidized or for free. Now, it said the landlord filed the eviction through the system as they were supposed to. And that's a good thing, okay? I believe that this landlord was going through the correct procedures. But what happened is this lady, right, she is dragging the process out. So let me keep going here. There's a bit more to this story. In a statement to the News Tribune, she denied wrongdoing, saying that Halbert not only failed to pay rent, but also vandalized his property. Betty's accusations against me are a blatant defamation of character, he said. Since May, Halbert said, her vehicle's driver's side windows were broken, a drone flew directly into her backyard, surveillance cameras were installed without her notice, her power meter box was destroyed, and a water pipe was busted in July by men reportedly performing maintenance, leaving an open sewage hole in her backyard. So let's go through her claims here. These are her claims of harassment, right? She said that her vehicle's driver's side windows were broken. Listen, if you live in any city, right, you could have vandalism occur to your vehicle. There's no saying that the landlord did it. I'm not saying the landlord didn't do it, right? But instantly saying, oh, well, this was the landlord trying to drive me out. Well, you know, I can't say that's true or not, right? But you cannot use that as an argument unless you have evidence that the landlord was behind it. The second thing she said, a drone flew directly into her backyard. Yeah. Did you know that I fly drones over my rental properties too? Oh, wow. Who cares? Okay? Flying a drone over your property, nothing wrong with that, okay? Now, if the landlord was looking up into the house, trying to see you naked through the windows, maybe I would be like, okay, well, yeah, that is, and you know, that is wrong. The other thing is, do you know that it was the landlord? How do you know it wasn't one of your neighbors who was flying a drone? I've flown a drone over my house here in my neighborhood, and it just happened to fly over some of my neighbors' homes too. Gee, you act like, well, the only one who could fly a drone possibly would be the landlord. No, there's a chance that it could have been anybody. So once again, unless you have direct evidence that it was the landlord, you need to shut up. The third thing she says is that surveillance cameras were installed without notice, right? And so a lot of the times in rental properties, guess what? Landlords will put up security features and you just have to deal with it. It's just one of those things, okay? And if the landlord felt that they needed to do that in order to ensure the security of their property, well, you can't complain, okay? The only way I would say it would be wrong with, like I said, would be like inside the house. But I don't think that's the case in this situation. It says her power meter box was destroyed. Once again, do you know who destroyed the power meter box? And the reason I bring this up is because I had a duplex in the Kansas City area, and one of my tenants decided they wanted to steal power, so they destroyed the power meter box for the neighboring tenant so they could run power over to their house and get electricity for free. And the power company actually was the one who informed me about it, and it was a total mess. Anyway, and a water pipe was busted in July by men reportedly performing maintenance. Listen, I've had people doing maintenance on my properties who accidentally broke stuff. Stuff happens. So of all these things here, right, you either don't have any direct proof that it was the landlord, or you're complaining about stuff that, you know, is not harassment in terms of the water meter or the water, you know, being busted, the water pipe getting busted. Okay, so I don't think that you could sit here and be like, oh, well, you know what? The landlord is doing this stuff on purpose. Don't blame me if your car gets broken into. Don't blame me if your neighbor is flying a drone over the property, okay? These are things that, you know, like you think the world revolves around you. Like this landlord or this property management company only got one property and they're all focused just on you. Got to get this one out. They don't care about you, okay? They just want you to pay. If they wanted to get you out, why did they go through the regular eviction process and file an eviction, okay? It doesn't make any sense. She had no electricity or water late last month, and relied on a neighbor to provide a bucket of water so that she could flush her toilet. She also installed her own cameras, including a second one in her backyard, after she says she was alerted by her alarm of a man walking back and forth there between the wee morning hours of July 4th. Hey, that might be just a regular trespasser. It could be one. Remember, you live in a duplex. This could be the people who are related to the other tenants in the duplex. Okay, give me a break. We don't know what's going on here. All we know is that you see a random person walking around in your backyard. This could be a homeless person. Who knows? But immediately thinking this is the landlord, ridiculous. In a court filing certified under the penalty of perjury, Halbert's duplex neighbor declared that the property manager had offered her $50 to get Halbert out of the home for a few hours, and later $1,000 to file a restraining order against Halbert. The neighbor declined both alleged proposals, saying she didn't feel comfortable with either and had no legal reasoning to seek protection from Halbert. And like I said, do you think people won't lie under the penalty of perjury? Happens all the time. Okay? Anyway, Halbert, she says, okay, I'm scared to death. I really am, Halbert said during an interview on July 23rd. What kind of person destroys his own house to get someone like me out? So she's getting interviews. Interviews, huh? Yeah, well, she like I said, she's trying to garner sympathy so that she can stay a bit longer. And she has no recourse. Absolutely none. She owes $12,000. She needs to go, period. And yet she won't do it. She's sticking around thinking that somehow someone is going to save her. Okay? And that just is not the case. Less than a week later, Halbert moved on, leaving behind half of her belongings, trading in the duplex for a basement in the house of someone she knew, and feeling certain that she had been illegally driven out. So she ended up leaving anyway. So what are we talking about here? We got this article. They're talking about landlord harassment. She didn't pay the rent for like 10 months. She owed 12 grand. The landlord was going through the legal eviction process. She should have left in the first place. She couldn't afford the place. The landlord was not going to allow her to stay, period. Okay? These stories are frustrating because let's say the landlord really was harassing her. Let's just say, we go out there and the landlord really was harassing her. Well, then we have to ask this, right? Well, why? Why would the landlord, risk, fines, penalties, possible jail time in order to get this person out of there, right? Because she's a nightmare tenant. She's a nightmare tenant. She's trying to portray it like she is just some innocent angel, and she's not, okay? She's a piece of crap. Owed 12 grand. She probably still owes the 12 grand. Landlord should come after her in civil court for that money. That's a lot of money, okay? And they shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't have to do that. You shouldn't be allowed to stay because you're not paying rent. And like I said, we're not a homeless shelter here. So I can understand why a landlord, especially in a place like Washington State, where they have so many anti-landlord laws, why a landlord would feel this would be their only course of action. Now, I don't condone that. I only condone going through the legal system. But I could understand, okay? So anyway, interesting article. Let me know what you think of this whole story in the comment section down below.